somebody said, why do I call God Allah? Why do I say Allah? I don't say Allah. I call him Ellah, not Allah. Right? Good. When you take the Quran, the Arabic version, right? Take the Quran, Arabic version. For those who are very well learned in the Arabic language of the Quran. Whenever you see the name of Allah, God, written as Allah with a fatah, alif, and the fatah with that sign up there, like a dash on top, then it's a wrong name. It's not the name of God. That is not the name God gave us in the Quran. So chapter 33, verse 70, God is saying, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. It says, oh, you who believe, be pious to God, fear God, right? And speak the correct statement, or state the correct speech. Right? Now, the reason why I call God Allah, there is something in Arabic called wasla. Wasla is written like a sword. If I can show you how it's written. Normally you see an alif, the letter alif in Arabic. This is alif. Then it has something on top like this. It's different from this. This alif is different from this. It's not the same. They are not the same. There's a difference. Now, this alif fatah is different from this. Now, this alif, it has the hamza bil fatah. This is correct. A is pronounced as A. Now, this is alif with a wasla on top. It's not a fatah. And when you check throughout the Quran, whenever you see an alif like this, without any sign on top, it represents this. Whenever in the Quran, any Quran you take, and you see an alif written like this, only, without anything on top, it represents this alif. This one in the middle is the one alif bil wasla. It has a wasla, a connection on top. The wasla means connection. Now this alif with a fatah is a vowel. This one, A, is a strong vowel. This one. So this is equivalent to what? A in English. The letter A. A. Right? Good. So I'm going to show you something here. When we say wasla, it's a diacritic. It's a diacritic. It's used in Arabic language. I'll show you the point on it. Alif wasla looks like a small letter sword. That is the sword on top I put here. It looks like that. On top of an alif is put in the Quran. You normally see it in the Quran, right? Or can be indicated by just an alif without the wasla on top. It can be indicated by just an alif. It means that the alif is not pronounced with a glottal stop when its word is connected in a verse or sentence. So for instance, when you take the word bismillah, bismillah. Now when you take the word bi, there is the alif there before the ism. So bism. But you don't mention the bi, you don't mention the because it has the wasla. So it gives a connection sound. So you say bismillah. You don't say bis Allah. Sorry, you don't say bi asm la. No. That alif is there, but since it has the wasla, it has a glottal stop. So when its word is connected in a verse or sentence, like bismillah, right? In the name, bismi, in the name. Now, for instance, when you go to chapter 1, verse 1, Surah Al-Fatiha, right? But when alif wasla is the initial of a standalone word, it becomes not e. I'll show you the reason why. It is not e. Listen carefully. Now, in Arabic, When this alif is written like this, with a sign below it, this is E, is pronounced E. When it's written upwards, like this is A. When it's written like this is U. This one, U. Then we have another one which has the sukun. Sukun. This has the stop sound, a stop. Like if I'm saying, let's say ba, that one has a stop sound. This one with the zero on top, right? So you see this one, categorization. Now in the Quran, you see the one with the wasla, like this on top, not a fatah, just like the letter sword on top. I'm going to show you how it's used in the Quran. The Arabs don't tell you the truth. They will lie to you according to the Hadith. Right? Good. Now, but when alif wasla is the initial of a standalone word, it becomes e, not e. Why? Because some Arabs have tried so hard to invent lies and cause contradictions in the verses of God. According to the Quran chapter 22, verse 52. Quran chapter 22, verse 52. That is the duty of the devil, to contrive in the whatever the messenger of the prophet has wished to be done, right? Good. They made a rule that whenever a wasla is the initial, it should be mentioned as E, alif, kesra, E. That's how they made it. So I'll give you an example. For example, when you go to chapter 96, verse 1, instead of ekra, they will tell you ikra, I. So chapter 96, verse 1, Surah Al-Alaq, chapter 96, verse 1, it's not ikra, it's ekra. Now, that sound there, when it's starting a sentence in the Quran, it doesn't have E or A sound. It's impossible to put a sound like that for it. Do you understand? Then it means you are changing the words of God. Because if God wanted, he would have put alif fatah there to say Accra. Just like a city in my country, Accra. You understand? God never did it like that. Instead, he gave the alif and the wasla. Or in some Qurans, you see the alif without the wasla. It's the same thing. But no sound on it. So when it's standing, it's silence on its own. Not E, not A, not U. Listen carefully. I put forth the challenge for any scholar out there who thinks he knows too much Arabic to step out. Let's have a dialogue on it. Now, they made a rule that whenever a wasla is the initial, it should be mentioned as E. So instead of ekra, they will say ikra. Then you have what? Chapter 61, verse 6. Instead of ebnu, they will say ibnu, like ibnu Adam, ibnu Maryam. They will let the word sound like a kesra, I, instead of e. That is another contradiction. Then we have again the ismu, right? Ismu. That is, they will say ismu, but it has to be esmu, not ismu. It is not a kesra. It is a wasla, but they will say what? Ismu Adam, ismu Musa, ismu Ibrahima. They will use the word ismu. It's not an alif kesra. For those who understand Arabic, you can get my point. But for those who are new to Arabic, maybe this might sound complicated for you a bit, but I'll break it down for you, inshallah. But why is it that when it comes to the name of God, Allah, they say Allah, when the alif doesn't have a fatah on top? Why not put alif kesra? If you are still using that wasla and you are saying ikra, ismu, ibnu, why is it that when it comes to the name of God, that same wasla is there? You don't say illah, you are saying Allah. Why? Now, why not put alif kesra to sound E and say illah, if that is the rule? So who gave them such rules? Now, this is where the contradiction comes in. Example, instead of ekra, they will say ikra. Instead of ebnu, they will say ibnu. Instead of esmu, they will say ismu. Instead of etlu, they will say utlu or atlu. Instead of edu'u, they will say what? Udu'u. Instead of ettabu'u, they will say what? Attabi'u or ittabi'u. Instead of ehdina, they will say ihdina. Ihdina surat al-mustaqim. Instead of ehdina. Now, instead of ennas, they will say annas. Instead of ashams, they will say ashams. Instead of alhamdu, they will say alhamdu. Instead of ar-Rahman, they will say ar-Rahman. Instead of Allah, they will say Allah. I challenge any prominent scholar to step face to face. Let's dialogue on this. Wallahi lazim. That is because no Arabic word in the Quran can start with a vowelless consonant on its own. Unlike English language, you have a word like school. You can see school is a consonant, the S, right? It's a consonant, S, school. But in Arabic, it doesn't start like that. So in Arabic, instead of school or skateboard or student, you rather, but when it happens in the Quran, an alif with a wasla is placed as an initial to obtain a vowel or vowelized consonant at the beginning of a verse to give it a neutral sound. Listen to the English, a neutral sound. It doesn't say an actual sound, a neutral sound. Now, if I say something is neutral, why will you give it an actual sound when it's a neutral sound? You get the meaning of neutral, when something is neutral, in between, right? A neutral sound. So instead of what? School, you say a school. That is why in English, that letter A is not always used as a. Like if it starts like, if you are spelling alphabet, you can see when you are mentioning alphabet, you say alphabet because there's A in front. But when is it that when A is written and you put a space and you put boy, you don't say a boy, but you say a boy. Why? You see, you use the sound because you give it what? A neutral sound. You don't say a boy. It's like you are speaking patois, Jamaican English. You say a boy. Similarly, in Arabic, it's like that. That's the rule. It must have a neutral sound, not an actual sound. So you don't say a school. You say a school, a skateboard, a student. So similarly in Arabic, that alif in front, it has a wasla. It shouldn't be an actual sound. It should have a neutral sound. So when a neutral sound, you don't say E. You don't say A. You don't say U. You say E. That is the neutral sound. Now, so by this methodology, the Arabs have tried to change the name of God from its original form, Ellah, according to the Aramaic language. Check the history of the Aramaic language. They call God Ellah. Ellah. That's how it's called in Aramaic language. Now, Arabic language comes from the Aramaic language. So let's see how it goes. In the Aramaic language, to become Allah, instead of Allah, they are now calling it Allah. Do you know who caused it? The Hadith. The fabricated Hadith caused that. And I'll tell you why. Now, using the name Allah according to the Quran is wrong. God never asked you to call him like that. So please seek knowledge before you start following something. It's wrong because nowhere in the Quran can you find the name of God with an alif fatah on top. There is no alif and fatah in the Quran for the name of God. I'll show you. Maybe you are new to this. So please study. Instead, you will find it with a wasla, alif, and that small little sword on top, which is Allah according to the Quran, as a stand-alone word and silence when it appears in a preposition like Bismillah. You don't say Bismi, Allah. No. When it comes in a preposition, you use Bismillah, Bismillah, like that, in the name of God or the God. The initial of God's name in Aramaic and Hebrew language is El. Does that sound ring a bell in your ears? The initial name of God in Aramaic language, which is Abraham language, the Abraham's language, right? Remember, Abraham is our forefather, right? Abraham. Now, the initial name of God is Ellah, El in Aramaic. In Hebrew, El. Still, El. The same initial can be found in the Quran. The same initial is found in the Quran. As the Quran is to serve as a confirmation of what was before it. According to Quran chapter 46 verse 12, whatever was told to Moses was the same thing told to Muhammad in the Quran. I hope you bear with me here. Now, so if that is the case, where did the Arabs get the name Allah from? Because according to God, chapter 34 verse 44, he never gave them any other books to study apart from the Quran. Chapter 43 verse 21, he never ever gave them any book before the Quran to study. Right? So now, apart from the Quran, where did they get the name Allah from? How to Bur'anakum? Let them bring their book and show us where did they get the name Allah, if not from the Hadith, the fabricated Hadith they have. That is what most of you are following. No wonder chapter 43 verse 78 says, God says, we have brought you the truth, but most of you hate the truth. I know some people will just say, oh, come on, what is this guy trying to say? Oh, Allah is the same thing. I can say God, I can say this, I can say this. Okay, your name is Shuaib. If I decide to call you Shabubu, is it okay for you? You tell me no. If I say why, you say no, because it's Shuaib. So call me Shuaib. Don't call me Shabubu, because that's not my name. So similarly, when you're dealing with God, call him as he gave you. And I'll give you the reasons in the Quran as to call God exactly how he asked you to call him. Yes. If you don't want somebody likewise to disrespect you. If your name is Lydia and I call you Pedia, are you happy about that? You tell me no. Why? Because you say that's not how you write it. Really? So then who asked you to call God Allah instead of Allah? So if that is the case, where did the Arabs get the name Allah from? In which book? Is it the Quran? They should come down, let's sit down and check where they got the name Allah from, if they are truthful, right? So now it goes on. Now let's see what the prophet Joseph said concerning people who form names which God has not authorized. So for instance, when you go to chapter 12 of the Quran, Surah to Yusuf, then you go to verse 40. See what Prophet Joseph said concerning people who fabricate names that God never gave them. So chapter 12 verse 40, you only worship names besides him which you and your fathers have named. Chapter 12 verse 40, listen to what Yusuf alayhi salam said. You only worship names besides him which you and your fathers have named. It didn't start from now. It already happened in the time of Joseph as well. People actually form names for God, which God never assigned for it. Now, somebody might say, okay, Brother Shuaib, you are calling God, God. You are saying God, the word God. Why are you calling God, God in English? Because you have a shallow mind. So let me explain to you. Chapter 114, verse 1 to verse 6. What does it say? He says, Kul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. Say, I seek protection with the Lord of the people. First of all, God is Rabb. He is a Lord of the people. Then he says, Malikin nas, king of the people. Then he says, Ilahi nas, deity or God of the people. Now the word ilaha is different from Allah. So I can call Allah God. It's not a bad thing. But to differentiate, that is when, if I want to differentiate and explain to you which Allah, which ilaha I'm talking about, then I can say the God or Allah. You understand? So calling God in English God is not a bad thing. Because whoever you are dealing with will know that you are actually talking about the God. Because that is the original God. Whatever gods you see around you are people which people invented. Like some Christians will tell you Jesus is God. Right? And some people will tell you Pharaoh is God. You understand? So I can call God in English and say God. But when I say God, to be specific, I can say the God, Allah. But when calling God, somebody will say, if you say we should call him Allah, why are you calling him God? Because he is Ilaha, Ilahin Nas. He is the God of the people, the deity of the people. But when you want to classify and differentiate to tell people who the God is actual, then you can say Allah. That is his correct name. So according to chapter 7, verse 180, you have to invoke him with his correct name, right?